So-Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org.
Enjoying what you've accomplished today. Look at where you are. It's a pretty cool place.
This is Mark Wojcik, and I'm wondering, how's your so-called career? Welcome to So-Called, the podcast that explores the why and how of work. On today's episode, we meet Valerie Trapunsky, CEO and founder of ChatterBoss. When we met, I asked her to tell me about her business.
I launched ChatterBoss 5 years ago. We are a remote executive assistance service. We work with entrepreneurs and business owners, and what we do is we provide them with a remote executive assistant share. So what we have discovered over these years is that all entrepreneurs have some sort of administrative projects or tasks that take up time in their week. Generally, we see that entrepreneurs can spend anywhere from 30 to 60% of their time just doing the administrative parts of their business to keep things running. What we also notice is that many entrepreneurs, business owners, early stage companies don't necessarily need a full-time 40 hours a week executive assistant. And that the idea for the company came to provide those entrepreneurs with an assistant for the amount of hours that they just need. So the service is on demand. You're able to work with an assistant as much or as little as you want.
Tell me, how did you come up with this business? Have you done that kind of work, or did you need this kind of support at some point, or maybe both?
I got into working as a personal assistant. It was through a family connection, not something that I necessarily, it was not something that I had considered as part of my career path, but something that had come up for me. And so I ended up being an executive assistant for 7 years. I worked for CEOs, high net worth individuals, A-list celebrities. And so I learned over that time how much high-powered executives, celebrities, how they leverage assistants and how much value the assistants can bring, and also the kind of standards and expectations they have of executive assistants. And so I was always passionate about businesses, about entrepreneurs, and it came very naturally for me to blend those two things together, to use my experience and provide it for the kind of demographic that was exciting for me. There were parts of it that I was really, really good at, and there were parts of it that I was really not good at. For the last few years while I was in that role, I was really trying to find a way, how can I leverage this experience? I don't want to just, throw away 7 years of learning, but how can I do it in a way that's going to make me feel good, and that's also going to allow me to show all of the parts of myself, leverage all of my strengths, and not feel like I'm always having to cover up my weaknesses.
So you got insights about this career from doing it, and then what about the spark or inspiration to say, hey, I'm going to start a business doing this?
It was so hard because I felt like I had this really kind of impossible dilemma, and I didn't know what to do with my skills. And it took me a very long time. And in retrospect, I was like, this is the obvious solution, right? Like, this is the obvious blend. But it took a lot of anguish to figure it out, because I knew the parts of the job that I really like. What I discovered in the personal assistant and executive assistant role and chief of staff role was that I have a lot of room to execute. I can have an idea, and the lead time to executing it is really fast. It's all up, it's up to me, and obviously, the few people that I work with. But I really loved being able to observe very successful business owners, entrepreneurs, celebrities, how they do their life, how they execute decisions. And so it was really, I didn't know it at the time, but it was training for me on how to be that way. And it also shone a light of, these are the parts of this person that I really want to emulate, and these are the parts that I don't. And I think it gave me a unique seat in then being able to create this company, because I was able to say, okay, this is the kind of boss I want to be. This is the kind of, this is how I want to be interacting with the people in this role. For me, it wasn't like aha moment. I think what it was like I was pushed into it. I knew that I could no longer be an assistant because it wasn't fulfilling me in the way that I want. And I also couldn't get another job because I had 7 years of experience. My experience was totally irrelevant in other industries. And so I feel like I got to it because I had no choice.
And you mentioned fulfillment. So let me ask you what you find fulfilling, what you enjoy about your work now.
Yeah, what I find the most fulfilling today is being able to work with people, being able to work with clients, and being able to work with the assistants, and matching them to one another for that perfect fit. For me, it's a really fun game to play. And as the years go on, I'm able, I've developed a sense of how these pairings will go. And for me, it's like, it's always a puzzle. That's been so fun, figuring out figuring out the tactics of how to put people together so that they have the least possible, the most frictionless experience that they can. So the personality and the communication match between two people is what I believe carries 80% of the relationship. And so that's been really fun, fitting all of these puzzle pieces together, troubleshooting, and particularly when there is miscommunication. That's really fun. And I know that that's not really fun for the people experiencing it, but for me, it's been so rewarding when you're able to fix that for somebody. And it's just been my greatest joy.
Valerie is writing a book based on her experience in running and hiring for a business that operates remotely, advice that is both timely and needed in today's working environment. I asked her to share some advice for those hiring remote workers.
Yeah, so, I love the question about hiring specifically for remote. As you know, I'm writing a book on this topic, so I can go on for a long time. I think it's a really fascinating topic. One of the things that I believe is different about hiring remote versus hiring in person is that, one, perhaps individuals, when you are doing the hiring process for remote roles, it sometimes makes people not put as much thought into the hiring process. So I think like that's the big one, treating the hiring process the same as, even if you are starting on a trial basis, and even if it's part-time, really treating it as if it is a full-time role where that person, where your business depends on it, and that person's, financial well-being depends on it, right? Just coming into it from a sense of commitment, and that starts in the hiring process. And I think the second piece of it is that when you are coming in to work in person, the individual that you're working with, well, you see them, you have this kind of banter, and all of that, aside from all of the social benefits, what it creates for you is trust. I see you, you're working, you're right there, you're not going to disappear. And so I give you trust faster, possibly, when I'm working with you in person. Versus remotely, I've had fewer interactions probably with you, even if I did my biggest due diligence on the hiring process. I've just spent less time with you. As a tip, just to remember that, or to keep that in consideration, maybe even put it like on a Post-it, right? Like, I'm going to give this person 1 month, right? Of like, or 2 weeks, whatever it is, like, but I'm going to give them my full trust, and use that training time. So the training process has to be a lot more intentional with remote employees. And the last thing that I'll say, like in terms of like tips and how to make things work smoother, is starting slow. 1 or 2 very clear, that's how we start, with 1 or 2 very clear and measurable tasks. So I think that for business owners who are hiring, you can also kind of use that for yourself. I am going to trick myself into, I'm going to slow it down so that I can build the trust that I need. If you start with like, here are 20 things that I need you to do in this position. And so if there is any communication breakdown anywhere, it's all 10 things, and then very hard to unravel where you went wrong. But if you start with 1 thing, then you're like, okay, I know that. Is it me? Is it you? Is it our miscommunication? Is it our expectations? And we know how to troubleshoot. Or if we need to part ways, right? This is where we do it, not when, everything is already on the table.
Valerie says that success for a business like ChatterBoss relies on being efficient at pairing clients and assistants while building trust. As you might guess, achieving that success at scale is a real challenge, and it's one of the things she's focused on doing next.
One of the things that's come out of this like obsession to have the perfect match for clients and assistants is that I started working with a gentleman who is one of the only remaining students of Polish professor Dr. Mazur, and who has been studying the theory of psychocybernetics over the last 30 years. And we started working together to say, okay, how can I pair clients and assistants? Now that we've identified the product and it feels so good, our ambitions in the next 6 months to a year is to really scale that. My goal is to become one of the top executive assistant companies for entrepreneurs and business owners in the US. So that's our project with ChatterBoss. And and I'm writing the book. And so I am taking the knowledge of this 5 years that I've been working with assistants and clients in a remote setting, and we're talking about how to reduce miscommunications in a work setting, how to bring on vendors in a remote setting. If you are a remote vendor, because a lot of the times you are both. A lot of the times you're both a client and then you are a vendor, and so you're in both shoes. And so with this book, we're speaking to you when you are in those different shoes, because it's funny, it's even though you sit in both seats, when you're in one, it's like we have this like magical ability to completely forget what the experience is like on the other side. And so that is that is something that we're hoping to bring to the market this coming fall. I'm very, very excited to finish that and bring it to the public.
And thinking of your career, what advice would you give your younger self?
One of the pieces that I would give myself is to trust myself more. I think that as a younger person, it's hard because you're looking for those data points. Like, is this good, or am I good at this, or am I bad at this? But all of that is external. I believe that internally we know, right? Like we know, like this is where I'm good, this is where I'm less good. We can tune in and just believe that we know more than we think that we know, and I think that that would go a long way. And I think the other thing that I've had to learn, I've really had to learn boundaries. And I think now in the remote world, like that's a conversation that is really top of mind. But I think that as a young person stepping into any career, you oftentimes feel like, I can't say no. I would miss birthdays, and I would miss, I would just miss life things. Now in retrospect, right? And I could have allowed myself to enjoy that, like my friends, perhaps that also goes into maybe like a third piece of advice, right? Just like enjoying where I am. And that's something, I guess, like my current self also needs this advice today, right?
Yeah.
Is enjoying what you've accomplished today. Trying not so much look out into the future. If I accomplish that, then that, really seeing like, this is today, what's good about today? What have I gotten? Am I on the path? And am I today the kind of person that I would like to be? And I think that that's a lot to be celebrated. And I think that that's a lot that I kind of skipped over on the way to what I saw was like going to be my big success one day, right? And like the truth is, it never actually feels like, it always feels like, okay, only if this next thing, only if it's next thing, only when this major institution like recognizes me, only when I'm on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine, only when I have a gigantic exit, right? But it's like, wow, like take a minute to, I'm saying that to myself now, right? Like take a minute to see, look at where you are. It's a pretty cool place.
So Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org. Our theme and transition music was composed by Roberto Cavaco. All other stylings are the sound of my voice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Subscribe and leave us a review. So Called is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcasts.